welcome everybody out to sea. So the wind has blown me further east. I'm far from home, far from the West Coast, now in Tennessee. And I was in a park the other day, and I've come to find that there's really good mushroom foraging out here. You got all kinds of chanterelles and porcinis, and there's good mushroom foraging out here. So I'm out at this park and I find some chanterelles and some porcinis, and I'm digging around in the leaves and whatnot, and a wasp stings my finger, and it's all swollen. It's pretty nasty. But it got me to thinking that the first time I was stung by a wasp, I was a small boy. I want to say probably 6 or 7, and I threw a rock in the wasp nest, right? And this was at the townhome projects I grew up in Tempe, Arizona, and my great aunt Gladys lived on the other side of the complex from me, so I spent a lot of time at her home. And on the side of her building in the bushes is a wasp nest. And I remember standing in front of it, seeing them all buzzing around. I can hear it, right? And I got this big rock, like baseball sized rock. And I'm just old enough to really begin to be conscious of things to some extent. And part of me knew, this is stupid, this is dangerous, this is gonna probably hurt me, but I'm really curious to see what happens if I throw this rock in this fucking wasp nest. And so I did, and I got stung up bad, and a wasp stung the inside of my ear. There's still a little crater in my ear in here. And reflecting on that a little bit, the fact that a part of me knew, this is stupid, this is going to hurt me, this is dangerous, but it's because of all of those things that I like it and I'm attracted to it. A lot of choices I've made later on in my life have been very similar as to when I threw the rock in that wasp nest when I was a little boy. And one example is my involvement in Ibogaine. How deeply entrenched I got into the Ibogaine world at the cost of my quality of life. I went into it knowing this is a wasp nest. I'm probably gonna get hurt. I'm probably gonna take some losses. This is probably a bad idea. But it's because of all of those reasons I have to fucking do it. So, I've talked about Ibogaine. I have a few videos talking about my Ibogaine experience. So, I took it in 2008, had my head cracked, became evangelical about Ibogaine, and moved down to Mexico, worked at Pangea Biomedics, spent a little time at Jeff Israel's, and then went into Long Beach and started doing rogue treatments in hotels in California. And while I was doing that, some of the time I was living outdoors in a garage. The woman I was working with, providing Ibogaine with, I was living with her. And initially, I was living outside in the loft of the garage, getting bit by bugs and whatnot, but I didn't care. I woke up every morning stoked that I was a rogue Ibogaine provider, right? Eventually, I managed to get a room in the house, and I'm paying $400 a month, and I'm just barely scraping by. I'm making $400 or so each rogue Ibogaine treatment. I was there for a few months, so to get back home to Seattle, I had to pawn shit. I pawned my turntables. I had to go pawn my turntables. I got $250 for 2 Mark II Technique 12s, right? I was like, you fucking bitch. But I needed the gas money, right? I make it back to Seattle. Everything had gone so horribly wrong in the Ibogaine world. So I went back to Seattle with my tail between my legs, and I quietly applied for FAFSA student aid while I was in Long Beach, and they're like, yeah, we'll send you back to college. So I was like, fuck, I should go back to college. So there's a moment of sanity, right? There's a moment of clarity. It's like, go back to college. I intended on finishing my accounting degree to become a CPA, because when I initially went back to college, when I got sober when I was like 22, I ended up studying accounting just because I took the class and I really liked the instructor and I liked the precision of it. But at some point, I'm conflicted. You know, who am I? Am I really going to be an accountant? Is that possible? You know, I've gone way too far down the rabbit hole of the drug underworld to ever really come back, right? I mean, it was hard too. You know, I didn't have money for college. I'm on a Pell Grant. I'm working like at least 30 hours a week. So I go back to Seattle from Long Beach, and I meet up with the owner of the bedding store, Soaring Heart, that I worked at for years. Great company. The owner was an awesome dude. Is an awesome dude. I met him. It's like, yeah, man, back in town. He fully supported me going and doing the whole Ibogaine thing. And I kind of reported back, you know, but didn't exactly express all the shady stuff I saw. It's like, I want to go back to school, you know. And so he actually ended up like firing someone there to get me a job back there. You know, that's how much this guy had my back. He drove me to the community college. He gave me like $500 to get started. So I was on the path to normalcy, you know, after bailing down to Mexico, losing all my music gear, having to pawn shit to come back, seeing just insanity in the Ibogaine clinics, and relapsing, right? I'd been sober for over 2 years post-Ibogaine. I thought there was no possible way I could ever relapse, and I did, at the Ibogaine clinics. And even when I was in Long Beach, I had started driving down to Tijuana, going to the pharmacy, buying Oxy and Valium, staying in a $20 a night hotel, nodding out for a while. I was already falling apart. You know, it was after like my third run to Tijuana and Long Beach. It was like, what am I doing? You know, and I'm doing like brutal rogue hotel Ibogaine treatments, people almost fucking dying. It's stressful, it's traumatic. It was ridiculous and absurd. And so I'm wanting to soothe, right? The best way I know how, with opiates and benzos. And so I see myself crumbling. And so I go back to Long Beach and I take 400 milligrams of Ibogaine, and I watch the tree grow into the house, and every leaf I saw grow represented every lie I bury into myself. I saw how I lie to myself. And I was very quiet for about 7 days after Ibogaine. Ibogaine shuts me up. It makes me very quiet. It's like, just shut your mouth, boy. And I mean, on a pharmacological level, I think it does some brain damage to where you just can't fucking talk. You know, when I got flooded, I had aphasia and couldn't talk for 4 days. So it's probably not some esoteric thing. It's just the drug is poisoning you. But I digress. So I'm doing well for like 6 months. You know, I'm taking Peachtree and accounting classes. I'm working at Soaring Heart. Everything is stable, but I'm still in touch with the Ibogaine world. And I'm like the go-to Ibogaine guy in the Northwest. And I've connected with all these people. I've made these connections, right? Like I'm dealing with people that are going to the Bastyr University of Natural Medicine. And then I have some rogue people that I met through the East Coast Ibogaine providers, Dimitri and Bobby. So Dimitri Abengo Mugianis, he made the documentary about Ibogaine called I'm Dangerous with Love. Just go watch that. And so I'd been aware these were like Ibogaine OGs, right? They were in touch with Howard Lotsoff, like the guy who founded what Ibogaine does, and they're doing rogue treatments on the East Coast, hard fucking core. And, risks be damned. And I was all in. I looked up to these guys as gods, right? And so I come into contact with these people because I was supposed to smuggle 7 grams of Ibogaine from Jeff's place across the border and send to them. But I got a bad feeling akin to the bad feeling I got when I sold the acid to the feds when I was a kid, and I didn't do it. But I stayed in touch with them. And one of them connected me with a guy in Seattle. He said he has resources. And he was like a wealthy gay dude, psychedelic drug addict, synthesizing DMT, the whole nine, and so I start working with this dude. We start doing rogue Ibogaine treatments. They pulled me back in. I couldn't leave, right, when I'm going to be an accountant. So what happened, I decided I'm not studying accounting anymore. I'm going to be a clinical pharmacologist. Fuck this shit. I'm going to invent drugs. I'm going to study drugs. So I take my algebra, I take my pre-calculus, I take my chemistry, like I'm actually moving forward. But I'm also continuing to relapse. Heroin and opiates became the deceiving vampire all over again. When I was injecting heroin when I was 16, but I didn't get strung out until I was 22. It was deceiving like that. I thought I had a handle on it. I knew better, right? Until I didn't. And it deceived me all over again. Like a vampire, I invited it in, and it slowly seduced me. Initially it's like, smoke some tar once every 3 months. Totally under control. Eat some Xanax, some Adderall, whatever. Take some Ibogaine from time to time. Continue to advocate for Ibogaine as the cure for drug addiction while I'm faltering and falling apart and slowly going down the rabbit hole of the drug world disguised as altruistic Ibogaine treatments. This was just a way for me to stay involved in the drug world, and fucking neck deep too. I made killer connections treating people with Ibogaine. I met people growing herb. I met people growing mushrooms. I met some serious fucking cats, I stepped up. So pretty soon I'm like moving pounds of Cubenzis, getting elbows for $600, and they were big, fat, like 7-gram Brazilian bones too. These were proper, old school, fucking 100-pound lots. I'm connected now. It's like I've paid my dues. I'm not a fucking accountant. I'm not a mattress salesman. I'm a fucking psychedelic wizard. And so it goes, So we get word that the OG Ibogaine cats from the East Coast, they're coming out to Seattle to do a rogue treatment, treating this young woman at the Homewood Inn off of Denny, I think, near downtown. And I had the privilege of being the courier, picking them up from the airport. I was fucking honored, right? Go to the airport in my buddy's car, pick these guys up, and the kind of saying that you don't want to meet your heroes, right? You're generally disappointed. Well, that was the case, Not that they were bad guys, I totally related, but it's like, they're just drug dealers, Sure, they might have some animal hides in their bag because they're doing the whole Bwiti dance with the Ibogaine treatment for $6,000. But it just all kind of seemed like a facade, And these guys had gone out to Africa, they'd become Bwiti practitioners and, absorbing and regurgitating aspects of this West African voodoo fucking witchcraft, essentially, while they're treating addicts who are out of their fucking mind. Really, it's terrifying if you think about it. Fucking demonic. So I picked these guys up, and when you're involved with Bwiti, you pay very close attention to symbols. When you're whacked on Ibogaine, especially Ibogaine, not just other psychedelics, but Ibogaine especially, you see things in symbols. You read things in symbols. You know, you, like Kanye said, maybe I connect dots where they shouldn't be connected. You know, that goes on. So we're driving up I-5 back to Capitol Hill to get these guys back to their hotel, and there's a car crash on the side of I-5. And Dimitri takes that as symbolic. Oh man, that's not a good sign. Well, you know what? Maybe there's something to that symbolism, because he was fucking right. I took him to that hotel. They offered me some iboga root bark, which I ate it. You know, why not? Let's bug out. I'm a wizard, you know? And he asked, hey, you want to go get a beer across the street? You drink? And at that time, I was actually really fighting to stay sober. I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't drinking. I was a psychedelic warrior. So I passed on that. But took his partner back to our buddy's house on the hill. And this guy was just kind of a pompous dick. You know, my buddy made this nice dinner. You know, we were treating these guys like royalty, right? This guy was just kind of a fucking dick. No two ways about it. So the next day, when this person shows up, who they'd been speaking with for quite a long time, and you know, you can find articles about this in the Seattle Times. There's articles about the Ibogaine bust in Seattle, Dimitri and Bobby, and you can find stuff about it. So they got set up. They had a physician out in Washington State who was referring some addicts to them for illegal Ibogaine treatments. And this, I think it was a woman who was referred to them, somehow got involved in the DEA. She was strung out, and, you know, to their benefit, they usually tried to push people to go to Mexico, like, hey, why don't you go to Mexico, do it legally, you know, why do you want to do it like this? They did try to, you know, I mean, it was a big punk rock fuck you to the law, but they did try to send this person elsewhere. They always did try to do that. But, you know, they're making cash too. Dude had some $300 jeans on, you know, just baller shit. So when this person showed up the day after I dropped them off at the Homewood Suites, when they left the hotel, they were going to do like a prayer circle at a tree, you know, this voodoo rite. And there's DEA there, armed DEA, and they're done. And the DEA took their like animal hides and all their voodoo shit, and they had some iboga and some ibogaine. They ended up getting like house arrest. You know, the case really got kind of swept under the rug because it's like, wait a minute, these guys are using this Schedule 1 illegal drug to get people off of Schedule 1 heroin and opiates. What are we really doing here, right? Albeit, you know, I know these guys had some fucking bodies, you know, the type of rogue treatments that were going on, they had some shit go south, you know, it comes with the territory. So I get word from Dimitri that like, hey, you should let your buddy know who picked us up that the DEA was asking about him. And I'd been arrested by the DEA in Seattle like 20 years prior. I'm sure these people knew who I was, you know. So another close call, a close call. Soaring Heart gets sold. You know, this magical hippie mecca of musicians and drug enthusiasts that can come and go and have a job. That went away. The owner sold it to a very corporate dude. And it just was not the same. An opportunity to be the intake advisor at an Ibogaine clinic in Mexico came to me. One of my good, close old friends who I introduced Ibogaine to. When I went and did it in 2008, I was the guinea pig, right? See if Ian survives this. Does it work? When I came back, I wasn't dead, and I wasn't strung out either. So I had a couple friends go and do it. One of these guys, you know, he was just a hustler, crafty hustler. He had taken some web building courses, and he knew how to build some bare bone websites. So when he went down and got treated in Cancun, he was hustling right off the bat. You know, I think he was dealing with Dr. Alberta Sola in Cancun, and he's like, yo, if I set up a website and send traffic to you, how much of a cut can I get? And they work that out. And this guy climbed the chain in a very slimy way. You know, he ended up like taking all the clients from Alberta Sola in some way, and then started working with Jeff Israel, and eventually kind of stole the whole website from him. And I know this guy had some deaths at his clinics. You know, he's got these fucking cavalier dudes in Mexico with snakeskin boots on ordering Ibogaine that I gave him the connection to in South Africa. And, you know, you order an ounce of Ibogaine, maybe a couple grand, you know, 28 grams. When you consider a treatment is going to be anywhere from 1 to 2 grams, 2 grams tops, you know, a little bit of root bark maybe. You're charging $7 grand for a fucking treatment? And a gram of Ibogaine? $100 or so, a couple $100. You're making a lot of fucking cash, man. And so, my buddy, you know, he told me he clocked near $1 million rocking this clinic. He met a woman, they got married, and she's like, if you don't pay taxes on this, I'm out. Because she's legit, right? So he had to give like half of that money to the government. So he sold this website for Crossroads Ibogaine Treatment Center or whatever to old school Martin Palenko, MD. Good old Doc Martin, who is an OG in the Ibogaine world down in Baja. I mean, he started some of the initial clinics, the Ibogaine Association, who was purchased by Claire, who treated me and nearly killed me, changed it to Pangea Biomedics. And he kind of been in and out of the game, right? And so Bo sold him this website, and Martin's trying to clock some people with Ibogaine again, make a bunch of cash. Bo introduces me to Martin. I'm in Seattle. My job is going south. You know, there's new ownership. It's not the same. It sucks now. School has fallen apart. You know, I made it like a year into college. Changed majors from accounting to clinical pharmacology, started relapsing, and then took on this management position at the job. Ditch school. It's like, I can't handle this. It's too much, right? I'm just going to do the job. I'm not happy with the new ownership, and this opportunity comes up to be the intake advisor for this Ibogaine clinic, where I'm capable of making $2 grand, $4 grand a month, you know, more than I'm making, and to be doing what I fucking love, you know, wading around in the deep end of the underworld of drug culture, clocking people with Ibogaine. And so I give notice, you know, I quit my job. Well, for one, I demanded like this huge raise, right? Which we were fucking underpaid, you know. I was like, dude, I've been here for years. You need to give me like $20 an hour, man. I'm struggling to pay for dental. I mean, come on. This guy was a cheapskate, and I was like, fine, I'm out. I have another opportunity. I was able to help one of his family members take Ibogaine, and the guy actually got clean, so that was cool. So I didn't really leave on great terms, you know. And I gave up stability. Again, and this is me throwing the rock at the wasp nest. Again. I know this is going to hurt me. I know this is unstable. I know this is stupid. And that's exactly why I'm going to do it. Because it just gets that fire, ooh, that something about me is attracted to the... My entire life has been unstable, right? And somehow I don't see anything outside of that, or deserve anything more than that. So, here I am, you know, out in the wild again. I'm the guy who answers the phone for Crossroads Ibogaine. I'm the guy who responds to all the emails. I'm the gringo who eases people in to go into Tijuana to getting cracked over the head with Ibogaine. And I was good at it. I had the place booked. and I'm relapsing. You know, I'm drinking pints of beer while I'm talking to people on the phone. My cell phone is ringing nonstop. I'm talking to people 24/7. I pick it up if it's 3 a.m. I was dedicated, man. I loved it. You know, I loved it. And I go down to the clinic. You know, it's in Rosarito Beach, kind of near there. And come to find, you know, it's far different from what I've experienced at Claire's, where it's kind of like a hippie commune. Everyone's welcome, eating together, whatever. It's all good. This was a business, right? This was a fucking business. Like, every piece of food was accounted for. Like, I ate a meal with the clients and came to find, like, that was a no-no. Like, you ate some of the food, you know? So it was very different. And I come to find that a lot of the staff was totally fucking ignorant. You know, I don't know if these people were registered nurses or what, but I had a couple clients down there. They both had the same name. One came out from Europe, one was from the US. So one of these guys had already taken Ibogaine, right? And he was doing well. Detox, made it through, alive, doing well. And the other guy had not yet taken Ibogaine, so he's still taking 30 milligram oxys. Blue 30 milligram oxys. And the guy who had already taken Ibogaine, he's supposed to get a blue 10 milligram Valium. Well, this fucking nurse mixed these guys up. She went to go give the guy who had already done Ibogaine the fucking 30 milligram oxy. And he knew what it was and came to me. He's like, Ian, dude, look what she just gave me. And I was like, what the fuck? And so I blow up on these people. And, you know, they take it personally, which I don't fucking care. You know, it's like, I'm the guy who's sending people down here. I'm not going to deal with this incompetence. And these guys are like, oh, this white guy's stepping on our shoes. Fuck you. You're giving people the wrong drugs. Get it together. So I didn't have a good experience down there. You know, and it didn't make me feel confident in the safety of the clients. You know, it's like, we got these nurses giving people the wrong fucking meds. And, you know, Martin's charging, you know, I think by trade he was like an eye doctor, an optician. Who knows though? Because in Mexico it's like, I'm a doctor. So, you know, who fucking knows? But, Martin told me, you know, he told me, when I have an ounce of Ibogaine, just thinking about how much money I can make from that, it really got him off. He tried to get me to go fill an Adderall prescription for him. He had an Adderall prescription in the States and he wanted me to use his ID. It's like, dog, you're of Mexican descent. We look nothing alike. He's like, just try it. So dude was on a bunch of fucking Adderall, you know. Everyone in the Ibogaine world was on fucking something. But Martin, though, you know, he's in Mexico. He's from Mexico City. He gave me his phone one time to get some info, and I saw he had an ebook about how to deal with getting kidnapped. And that's just a reality when you're moving around in Mexico doing shady shit, making money. So, you know, I'm all in, right? Like, I'm going down to the clinic in Mexico and I'm smuggling fucking iboga root bark back to send to people from the US, you know. I'm taking phone calls all day, and then at night I'm going to the fucking bar up the way in Fremont, like packing up Ibogaine manila envelopes, just like a G at a table, drinking beers, eating food, like $50 a night, bawling, you know, just fucking bawling. And I'm hanging out with Froje and drug dealers, and I'm moving around zips of MDMA and getting 2CB pills and going to parties and, you know, smoking meth and snorting coke and going to raves and treating people with Ibogaine. You know, I'm Mr. Ibogaine, Mr. Sober, right? So I start relapsing really hard, working at Crossroads. And this was after I went down there. One of the clients fucking died. And I don't know what happened, right? I left the clinic, I was in San Diego. I get a call from Martin. This guy fucking died. Might get a call from the family. I didn't end up having to talk to the family. That hit me really hard. That hit me really, really hard. And a lot of people in the Ibogaine world are able to just walk away from the deaths, apparently. You know, just keep going. Because you're not going to make this kind of money anywhere else, you know? Where else can you make this kind of fucking money? You gotta keep treating people with Ibogaine. And if there's a few bodies along the way, well, you know, that's just kind of part of the game. Oh well. Sorry. What can you do? You know, we tried. And I started grilling Martin a little bit more. You feel this is ethically right? Oh yeah, I feel like what I'm doing is the right thing. So I was the one who told Martin, dude, I'm relapsing hard, I'm struggling. I don't think I can do this job anymore. And what I'm gonna do, I don't know. But morally this is wrong. And I'm struggling again. And I had no desire to take Ibogaine again myself because I honestly felt it would just kill me. I'd taken enough Ibogaine. How much more Ibogaine can I take? Something, you know, else is wrong in me. I'm surrounded by drug addicts. I've chosen to continue doing this. This is around 2012. You know, I take Ibogaine initially in 2008, stay clean for a couple years, dive into the deep end, try to get out of it, get sucked back in. And everyone around me, they're just wanting to make money, right? It's all about the money. And that's not what I was about. I felt like I had dues to pay. Like, I consciously made it hard on myself. I still felt like I was paying dues, right? I was still guilty. And then I had survivor's guilt. You know, I've seen so many people die that I've met in the Ibogaine world, and I have survivor's guilt. And I'm trying to soothe that pain with heroin. And around this time is when the fentanyl starts showing up in the black tar. And initially, we didn't know it was fentanyl in the tar. You can get the old school $80 ball, you know, the 3-gram Mexican ball of tar in Seattle. All of a sudden, you got this new tar called Pure, where it's $100 a gram, and a couple hits off foil and you're nodding out. Way stronger. Initially, we just thought it was way more purified tar. Come to find, that was the introduction of fucking fentanyl. So, you know, Martin did offer, like, well, you know, we can maybe give you some Ibogaine. I was like, I'm good, dude. I'm good. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm on borrowed time anyways, right? So, you know, at the very least, Martin was the only one in the Ibogaine world who actually fucking paid me. You know, I think I made like $400 commission off of each Ibogaine treatment I sold, and I was able to do like 4 a week. And then eventually it just turned into like a $3,000 flat rate thing, just cash. I don't have any health insurance, and I'm just fucking spending frivolously, you know, frivolously. I'm out to the wilderness, man. I don't have a stable job. I'm not in college. I'm strung out. I'm fucking strung out again. How did this happen? The vampire is back. And from 2012 on to like 2018, it's just wilderness, man. Just wilderness. You know, I remember I told myself after I left Crossroads, I just want a job where I can bust my ass and not have to deal with anybody, not have to deal with anyone's emotions. I took a night porter job at the Tallgrass Bakery, the bakery in Ballard in Seattle. I'd start work at like 9 at night and clean the place until like 5 in the morning. And that was a pretty good schedule for a drug addict. And I came across a really good heroin connection. You know, I got this punk rock dude down on the Blade in 3rd and Pike, and he rounded some cats up. Because every time he hooked his Mexican up with customers, he gets a bag, right? So I got lucky one day, and he's like, yo, I'll introduce you to my Mexican. And I'm sorry, that's just what you call your heroin dealer on the West Coast. You're Mexican, because they're all Mexicans. This guy was actually Honduran, but he was still a Mexican. And he had that light brown bomb heroin, fucking $60 a gram, bill 80 a ball. I was smoking that heroin for well over a year, working at the bakery. You know, I went back down to Sandy's and took some Ibogaine at one point, stayed clean for a while, just doing random jobs, struggling to stay healthy, just treading water, playing some music here and there, you know, but just lost, man, just lost, and resentful and bitter, and just busting my ass, you know, at random jobs. Like I was roofing for a while. I went back to fucking roofing. That did some permanent damage on my body, I'll tell you that. I was working at Big John's, the international market in Soto. Around 2015, you know, I get linked up with some old school narcotic cats living in the Seattle Housing Authority off Denny on Cap Hill. And pretty soon I'm up, you know, in the penthouse of the fucking drug den, you know, safes full of dope. You know, all of a sudden it's not just heroin. We're smoking clear. There's fucking hundreds of Xanax pills coming from South Africa, and I'm continuing to talk about Ibogaine and da-da-da-da-da-da, and working in a restaurant, you know, and just treading water, lost. So man, yeah, you know, and I'm on Suboxone, you know, like it went from hits of blotter acid to hits of Suboxone, you know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get off of this. I've at least removed myself from the underworld of drug culture entirely, you know, and I've grown a lot. You know, my views are completely different from what they once were in such a drastic way. It's shocking to me. And looking back on a lot of what I experienced is just, you know, tragic to me, and I'm lucky to be alive. And some days it's difficult to remember that, you know, because it feels like I'm on borrowed time. Would I recommend any loved one go and take Ibogaine at this point? No, I don't know. Definitely not in Mexico. You know, there's some people in Canada that their intentions are good, but you know what? Just because your intentions are good doesn't mean you are good. You know, one time I was talking about my acid bust with my mom, and she said something along the lines of, well, you meant well. And I kind of took that to heart for a long time. Well, yeah, I did, you know. I meant well. But something that has struck me recently, thinking about that, is that there's a difference between meaning well and doing well. All right? You know, I had a couple people who tried to reel me in from the Ibogaine thing. You know, I said, well, my intentions are good. Well, you know what? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know, rest in peace to everyone who's been lost, man. And prayers to everyone in the struggle. Much love. Anyone around Nashville, you serious about playing some music? Get a hold of me. I'm trying to start a fucking band. Peace.